Correct. Any of you guys during the call have any questions, feel free to unmute your line and ask away. If you want to follow along on the agenda has the basic layout of what we're going to be talking about today, and then we'll add some details as we go. It is now officially week 4, I believe, and you should definitely have a moving robot by now. If you have a moving robot for whatever reason it is, whether you guys haven't been doing much or you took your part, now it's not working, you can't get it programmed, you can't get it wired, your gears are binding, whatever the reason is, you now time to act. Don't wait and later on in the season. It should be your #1 priority to have a moving robot working right now.
Very, if you have a moving training now, and going to, we'll just say, realms of the unknown, which means trying to somehow get mechanisms to work on your robot. In my opinion, if you don't have something going already down the mechanical route, don't try mechanisms at this point, because there's a lot of other stuff that could be done right now other than trying to get mechanisms working or getting it to work with a kit apart chassis, trying the frame to make it work. Go with 2 tracks in the front, omnis in the back, and you'll thank me later. It's running on the machine.
You just want to mention, because we bring this up each week, and I just want to make sure teams understand, have taken our urgency the first week and got your robot moving, and each week you sit there and you think, wait a minute, they said this week the robot should be moving. Well, you've got different people who call in each week, and we just need to make sure that you understand, if we don't keep saying, make sure that robot's moving, and if it's not, get help, some who are just logging in for the first time might go, oh my gosh, I can get help. So we just need to make sure it's friendly for everybody, and we will say, even next week, we will again say, if robot's not moving, please get help. You can contact either Clint, Brandy, Jason, or myself. I'm Kyle. Through the emails that we send out about the minutes, but it is so important to get that robot moving.
Important because some people might think, oh, that's obvious, I need the robot moving, but you will competitions where there will be teams that do not have their robot moving. They had all 6 weeks, and the robot is still moving. Last year we had a situation where a rookie got started late, and we actually started working up after back. Or we actually went to another competition a while back where they showed up and thought you had to build the robot at the competition, once the competition was building your robot. So I want to prep everyone to think of what level you're at and where you're at in your build process.
Let's assume that you all have a robot that's moving, and if you don't, unmute and let us know at some point during this call and tell us that you we'll see what we can do outside of this call. The first thing,
and do not feel embarrassed or ashamed to tell us, please. No, we're here to help.
We need you to make sure. Go ahead.
5554, you said Omni in the back and additional in the front.
Clinton.
Yeah, sorry about that. I have this on me. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to take a look at it. The reason why I suggest that is because when your traction's in the front, your point of rotation will be between your 2 traction wheels, and you actually pivot around just like a true fork truck does, where the back end swings. Something you to interact and work with the toes a little bit better. If you do traction all the way around, you're going to have so much friction, it'll be hard to turn. If you do omnis all the way around, you might be flipping and sliding a little bit, and your center of rotation will be on the center of the robot, not in the front end where you're interacting and working with those toes. Or is it 9 total or 6? 4. Yeah, when you get 2 tractions in the front, 2 omni in the back, you don't drop center anymore because the omnis get rid of all that friction that you normally create. And by having 4, the transition over the school platform will be smoother than if you had a 6-wheel drive and it kind of climbed higher and had a braking point more severe than a four-wheel setup.
Okay, and then a special has to go to reach them from the back.
They use different, belt sizes. I think any mark has on their website, you know, what size belting you need for 6-inch wheels and tells you what hole location you use. And it's actually for one of the teams that was showing it a couple weeks ago to get their robot moving, came out, what some people have done is use the wheel in the center, leave it in there, and it can go over the bump still, and put 6 inches on the outside. So this wheel will actually act as your, belt, so you're worried about that. And I think what we ended up doing with them is actually we took the holes off and we actually drilled out the rim of the 4-inch wheel, so that was gone and it no longer hit. It acted as a spacer. Now granted that wheel is destroyed, but it makes it where that wheel doesn't hit when they went over the ball.
I go with the trend and the front mounting in the back. We need to buy different transmissions. Right now we have the kitted parts with the two motors together, the belts going out the front and the back. Is there anything else to identify what parts are needed? Or?
Actually, you can use the same transmissions that are on the kitted part chassis and belt them to the front and back. Your wheels don't have to be driven independently when you do traction and the one that needs to be independent is mechanic. And I'm having a lot of people call and ask questions about that. And it's the easiest thing to do to get mechanics on a kitted part chassis. There's really no simple solution for that. There's something that has to be done or modification.
The mechanic, is that an assembly or is that a specific wheel type?
Those are a specific wheel type. Two left, two right, and it'll also do an omnidirectional motion. That's been very appetizing to people this season. Like I said, if you're not there yet, or thinking about it still, I suggest you thinking about not doing it. I don't say that, I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks. So if anyone else has any questions about the two traction wheels in the front, two omni wheels in the back, I'm going to include some information in the notes of the link where you guys can go and check out a little bit more information on that too. Go ahead and move on to the robot sizing and transportation mode. A little bit about this last week, but we just want to give you guys a couple reminders that there is a weight restriction. Clint, do you want to go into this a little bit?
The weight restriction is in 110 pounds. With all the mechanisms at the top, you don't have a situation where you're like, oh, well, the only way mechanism A, this match and next match we're going to be B. So we got to make sure we're in 120 pounds in both those configurations. No, there's two other ones that you have to add them together. So you have to weigh in with the robot. It's going to be our youngest. And many pounds of the back. So that's not included in 120 pounds.
Might be asking, weigh a robot. I'll give you some examples of things that we've done. First year, many years ago, we went up to the wrestling team and asked if we could borrow their athletic scale because we knew it was going to be accurate. The wrestlers are very to their weights. So one thing that you could do is borrow a scale from them until you have enough money to buy your own. But then what you might want to do is cut a platform, like a platform, put it on, zero everything out, and then put your robot on top. When you do your robot, include, even if it's not all assembled, include, you expect to have on that robot, wire, any of the controls, anything you think you're going to be adding to it to get an idea of what you weigh. It's important so you have an idea of what it's going to be, because the last thing you want to do is get to competition and find out you're 5 pounds overweight. 5 pounds overweight is a complete mechanism off of your robot.
Zero.
Question?
650, I just want some clarification on the weight. You said that was 120 pounds and it does not include the battery?
Correct.
When you race at competition, they'll have you bring your robot and all of your mechanisms to the weight. You do not have to have a battery in it. If you have bumpers, your bumpers do count towards your weight. Bumpers are not required this year, but they do count against your weight.
Question?
To do with the robot and I guess the build and some design issues. We're having a problem trying to figure out the counterbalance, the counterweight. You know, we're picking.
Yeah, it's on my computer. Sorry.
It's on the website.
Is it Tom?
No, Rodney. What was it again, Rodney? I'll repeat it.
Okay.
1 second.
We're having a problem trying to figure out how to weight balance. We don't have enough totes. We couldn't get enough totes. So once we start picking them, we have to counterbalance our robot so it doesn't tilt forward or loses traction or anything. And I didn't know if anybody had that problem or if they're at that point.
Yep. Okay. Let me re-ask it to the line. So Rodney was saying that he's with counterbalance. So when they're trying to pick up the totes, they're starting to lose traction. I was wondering if anybody else had seen that same thing. I guess my suggestion would be put your battery on the opposite end of where you're picking up totes if you can, and have your mechanisms on the back there. I don't know if you have any other suggestions.
You're gonna have to be observant of your center of gravity. If you can have your lift mechanism, maybe of some kind of upright or something like that. Who knows, right now they're mounted in front of your wheels. Maybe you can shift that behind those wheels so that they're less likely to have a pivot point there. And as we said, moving your battery is by far the biggest method you can control where the location of it is. So go as far back as possible. Still running into issues there. You could consider maybe some kind of honey bars or something like that to prevent tipping or rocking. Weigh your robot too. You might be having a robot weighs 50 pounds right now. You can weigh 120, so you're going to have stuff later on. And if you go to competition and you're still having more balance issues and you only weigh 160 pounds, or sorry, not 100, 60 pounds, throw another 60 pounds on the back just to make sure you don't tip over to counterbalance everything. You use anything counterbalance besides an unplugged battery. Those are legal things to be used as counterbalances.
Yeah, get some, half-inch thick steel plate and put steel plate on the bottom of the robot to be able to counterbalance a mechanism.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're going to be trying to add weight, make it useful weight. Who knows? Maybe you throw additional motors on the robot to make so that your elevator or lift or mechanism can go faster or have a torque. Another arm or something to do something else at a different portion of the game. Try to make useful weight if you can. If you can because it's crunch time, then yeah, just put a piece of steel metal or something on the robot.
Okay. Now, you mentioned going to competition. Now, I guess for the stop.
Hey, Brandy.
Questions are going to be in the question and answer part of the note.
One second, Brandy. There was a follow-up question. Sorry.
You had mentioned change the robot. I thought once we hit the stop build date, you can't do anything after that, right?
Once you hit the bag date on the 17th, you do it, you get to your competition. So once you unbag at the competition, you can weight to it there
Okay.
if you're going to need extra weight. It'd be better if you found that problem out earlier and we're going to take care of it and test with the weight in the upper areas.
Let's talk about this. After the bag weight, you're not going to be able, or after the bag date, you're not able to open up the bag and work on the robot until a week before your competition and your window of time. When you tournament, and this is a very good question, to find out what time your tournament opens. Brandy and Clint, are all the tournaments opening at the same time?
I think that FRC Michigan has made it a requirement that all of the tournaments have to open at the same time. Last year, they opened, I believe it was at 4 o'clock on Thursday.
Do we know what time
So
this year is?
with holding or your bag time is within 7 days prior to your.
So getting back to that question, your bag time, you have 1 week prior to your competition. So from Thursday at 4 p.m., if 4 p.m. is the starting time again, to the following Thursday, that's the window that allows you to do your unbagged time. However, I highly suggest if your robot is not working, take your robot and you get to the tournament at whatever time they open on Thursday. It allows you to unbag your robot and start working on it until the pits close. That could be 4 hours additional time that you could possibly work on it. So find out what time they open, and then the next morning, obviously, you've got time before everything starts up. But take advantage of that time. I cannot emphasize that is free open bag time. So go to the tournament. That is free time for you to work on that robot. Now, you can't work on it at home. You have to be at the venue. But once it gets open, you've got a chance. And then the other thing is when you're there, that's the supreme time to ask veteran teams for help. If you have that balance problem still, go get veterans and say, how do we fix this? What can we do? There may be a very quick, simple fix, but as Clint was saying, really understand where your G is. But the important thing is ask for help. Again, rookies. You rookies only once. You need ignorance all you want, and we will stop, we will help, we will listen, and we will take care of you. Take advantage of that. Plead ignorance as much as you can this year. All right, take care of the question.
Now you're a little quiet for me then, I don't know. But the other thing that you could do is, like that, you're
Really loud, Clint. You are really, really loud.
I'm excited. Okay. So, I don't know what your mechanism is for lifting up the totes or containers, but if you can try to maybe angle it back so that maybe when you pick up things off the ground, you need to be, and as you lift things, it starts to lift it over top of your robot instead of straight vertical. That might not be a desirable thing, but removing that weight so it goes over top of your wheels and over top of your robot will prevent you from being as quote unquote tippy. That it will allow for you to do what you need to do.
Awesome. All right, now to size and dimension restrictions. So dimensions this year, Clint, you want to go into that a little?
So there's 2 dimensions that need to be understood. There are 2 configurations. It is transportation configuration and your configuration on the team. Transportation configuration is actually the most restrictive of the 2. You within 28, 22, 78 inches tall. So what they're going to do at the competitions, they're probably going to measure from, point to point, and make sure that in mention you're 28 inches or less. And they'll measure the other dimension, make sure you're 42 inches or less. Be afraid to design your robot maybe 27.5 inches, so that gives you half inch of play, allows for you to have things hanging out or sticking out of the, of your ring perimeter or your robot. 28 inches, you can never extend above during rotation configuration or when you're on the field. well, we fixed it code so it doesn't let us that high. My personal opinion, to make it easier on yourself, easier on us, and easier on the inspectors, is just make sure your robot never goes up to 88 inches tall. Once again, maybe you go to 77 inches to ensure that you're always under that dimension. When you robot on the field, you have 1 minute to set it up or less. You can be as big as you want. Maybe you have an arm on a hinge, so when you're transporting it, you're within your travel configuration, you set it up on the field, you tip it down, and it saves down the rest of the match. It would be perfectly legal.
This is 5-row again. I missed it or not, but you were going to say, how do you weigh a robot? And I don't know. How do you what?
That we were talking about a little bit earlier, and I hope you can hear me better now. We talked about getting a scale. You have to get a scale and put the robot on the scale. Now, the easiest way to do that is get a wrestling team or someone in the building that might have a scale, and then you put a platform on it, zero it out, and then put your robot and all the parts on top of it. And then when you do, you'll know approximately what that weight is.
I can repeat that.
No, that's all right. Clint said I wasn't easy to hear, so I probably needed to repeat it anyway.
All right. So we're going to focus on bumpers. Bumpers are not required. The only reason you want bumpers this year is because they're pretty, or you can use them as a counterbalance.
The thing is that of your weight and other things than using them as bumpers.
We're not going with bumpers. We could use that weight in other places. So bumper 27 will not have bumpers.
You got another question, Ronnie?
Yes, I did. You hear me okay?
It's called aluminum frame.
We got another question on the call.
Ronnie?
You're talking about the transportation mode, which is for those dimensions, the 28, 42, 78. Is a possibility, because the robot isn't that high, it does exceed the 24 by 42 if you're to sit it flat. If we were to tip it up and put casters underneath it, it would be well within that. Is that a possibility?
The question is they're not in package. They're 28 by 42 in the, I guess, the standard dimension. But if it's set your robot on the side, exactly inside that dimension, right? So chassis length is greater than 42, let's say.
Right.
Stood it on end, and it's under the 60 or whatever, 78.
Does that work, Clint?
I haven't heard anything about that yet.
And you're traveling, your robot is always in that orientation.
Oh, no.
So you could have a robot that, let's say, is long and 28 by 28, and whenever you carry it home, you put it standing right up like a tower or something, and you travel it. So it's 28 by 28 by 68 inches tall. Use that within the travel configuration. The concern is, like I said, is that the thing doesn't tip over or hurt anyone. I'm traveling that, so your robot part, you might want to make sure that it counts your robot holds it in that position so it won't tip over.
Say, like,
Yes, it does.
they're not fit in the travel configuration unless the wheels are perpendicular to the ground instead of parallel to the ground.
Right.
I mean, as long as those dimensions are met when you're traveling. So you have a competition who don't care. So there's a lot of space and there's room for you to down, and they're like, hey, we don't mind if you travel in that configuration. It's only like a little arm sticking out. However, you get to one place where they're a lot guys, and they're like, hey, your little finger that sticks an inch out, you got to get that inside, otherwise you're not in your travel configuration or red card. So you never purpose of the travel configuration is to ensure that your robot will go through a doorway. That's the only reason they have the travel configuration. Is that when you go through a doorway of your tool, you will fit, and you will get that robot out.
So the answer is, if I have casters on the side so I can tilt my body up and just push it along or do it, good or no?
Yeah. So yeah, if you were to put casters on the, let's say you tip your robot on the side, there's casters on the side of your robot, or you don't even need casters, you just need to set it on whatever your cart is,
right,
support the robot.
Okay.
Part of the robot.
Yeah.
You can either build them into the robot, or you don't necessarily have to build them into the robot.
But if you build them into the robot, they have to fit within those dimensions, even the casters.
Right.
Yeah.
So I suggest building them into the robot. Right, and to weight, right? So I'm having like a mechanics dolly or whatever, or a moving dolly, and put your rod on the side and make sure you can strap it in so it stays in that configuration and doesn't fall over.
Okay.
And that actually brings up another good point, and we just talk about it later, but you might want to think about it now. How are you going to transport your robot? You want to have some sort of a cart or something from pit to the field, to your pit, and actually to your car or your vehicle that's going to transport the robot. So there are lots of different ways to do this. We'll talk about it more in the upcoming week, but get kind of in the back of your head. What we did is we made like a tray to put under our robot, thanks to some pictures that Clint sent out last year. We mixed it to our own desires, and we could just pick up the robot without any trouble because we had to worry about the bag and everything else. So we'll talk that more in upcoming weeks. Brett, you want to make a note of that, and then that way you guys can understand how you're going to get your robot. You don't want them pushing their robot on the ground everywhere. That's just horrible. That's exhausting.
All right, do we have any other questions?
This is 623. You decide to them separately. How many times do we have on the field to put us onto our robot?
My understanding that everything that is on the robot needs to be attached to the robot when you get on the field. So you're going to be able to take like different parts out and then assemble them on there. It has to be that understanding of the rule. It has to be connected in some way, but when you get on the field, like if you just had bungee cables around it, you could unbungee it and it could, fold out into an accordion for all I know, but it has to come assembled on the field.
I'll do some research this week. I don't know. I guess I intend to build our robot. We don't really want to have like a whole separate mechanism that you have to bolt on when you get to the field because it takes time. So I'll do some research and find some of the Q&A that probably address these issues so that we can maybe put them in the notes for people to read, and we'll maybe even say them next week just to let everyone know what the ruling is on that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, you have a minute to set up. So even to answer your question, how long do you have? You have a minute to set up your robot. Carrying onto the field, setting it down, lining up the on, doing whatever, hooking things, pinning things, dropping things, taking bungee cords off, all has to be done within a minute or less.
And you saw your mechanisms within your transportation configuration, correct? So you can't like have another guy walk onto, you can't have like your second driver walk onto the field with like a 5-arm. It has to go onto the field as one unit, then get up. And
line might be is if I have an arm that's say out of a piece of 1x1 tubing, and I sit inside of my robot and it's just kind of hanging out inside. I'm going to take that out of that space that's within transportation configuration and put it on the robot and plug it into a 1x1 tube so it sticks up. Is that legal? I don't know the answer to that right now. Right, or to be on a hinge. So I'll do some research on it. I'll try to get everyone an answer back onto that. If it's out there, that question hasn't been asked yet, I'll try to ask the question and we'll try to get the answer.
And Hold on to
Competition manipulator.
program.
Production on competition manipulator.
Thanks, Jason.
No problem.
All right, my notes are getting real long. I lost my place. So this week you guys should start production on your competition manipulator. No, we don't call this our final design. The great thing about FRC is that there's always room for iteration, and you make something for your robot that's not necessarily the thing that you must have on your robot until the rest of the season. So with what we call this is your competition or your version 1 manipulator for competition. So it's very important that you have your robot moving, and you put this on your robot to see how it interacts with game pieces. Having someone on your team hold on to your arm or your grabber or your scooter or whatever you have is a lot different than putting it on a robot. So you have to remember that this doesn't need to be fancy, it just has to work. You guys don't have to do something that requires extensive machining or to be a good manipulator. It just needs to work. Thank you. Kyle, Jason, anybody want to touch on this?
I'll touch on it first, I guess. With this competition manipulator, it might be what you already have, and it might be like Brandon was saying, wood or peat. The component that Brandy stated that I want to make sure everyone picks up is make sure you put it on your robot and you test it in real world situations or the environment situations. Don't make that toe perfectly square to the robot. Don't let the students or other mentors push the container into the robot. Because the robot would just do motion, but I'll do it for it. Because it'll react different. Who knows? Maybe every time you drive into the container, it falls over every time you hit it. But when someone else pushes it, they never knock it over, right? So you want to use those real world situations. If you are picking it up from the human player loading station, maybe you put a little angled piece of wood, slide it down, and see how it lands. And maybe it'll be crooked to the wall, and you got to see how does your intake mechanism read that, and how does it work with it. Another example would be out the landfill. With the landfill, the totes are right next to each other in a certain configuration. It's difficult for your arm or your grabber or your manipulator to get in and get those totes. So what are you going to do in that situation when you need to get those totes? How are you going to free them? How are you going to get them out of there so they can do something with them?
I agree with that.
All right, do you have any questions about manipulators and when we say manipulator, we're talking about the thing that touches the game piece is what we're talking about. All right, then let's go ahead and move on to throw.
Hello?
The thing I want to cover is when you are testing, make sure your robot is up on block or stands when you deploy any new code. But we have said this before, we want to remind you again that every time you change your code, you should have this thing up on block. This does not mean just the first time you deploy default. This is when you're testing your drive train or doing something, have it up on block because you never know what's going to happen. And probably 27 also has one victim to the raging robot that is trying to run over people. So just please keep safety in mind.
And not
First,
kidding.
you want to talk a little bit about the goals of AUCON? About our goal, second goal, and third goal of AUCON should be. Kyle or Jason, if you guys want to touch on this.
I think we stated before, I think we might have talked about this last week, but again, the key component is moving your robot. The easiest way to score AUCON points is to have a robot move into the auto zone. You can move into the auto zone from two different locations. You can be near the staging area, where you have the yellow totes and the green containers. You can actually be in the area between the landfill and the auto zone. And it's not just like, hey, we're not going to push anything, we don't want to get in the way. We'll start out in between the landfill and the auto zone, and we'll just move forward a little bit, make sure we get all the way in, stop members, if all three robots do that in the match, congratulations, the entire land is 4-4. And then I say, second one would be maybe trying to push the containers or totes into the auto zone and just focus maybe on one set. But when you focus on set, know that each set might be different. With the opportunity, because depending on what your other alliance members do, to get the container and tote has no scoring platform in front of it. You must do one of the other ones. So if you just want to see how your alliance react, we have all three different positions.
Awesome. Do we have students about programming, having trouble with their programming right now, and need any assistance?
Rodney, another question?
Yeah, in reference to programming, field management system, they mentioned some stuff about e-stop and having your robot. I'm not familiar with that. I'm kind of confused. There's an e-stop and then be able to stop your robot based on that.
Field management system, there is an e-stop.
Do the question.
All right. The question was, Rodney was reading in the rules that in the field management system, there's an e-stop. E-stop is normally not used unless something goes crazy with your robot. Something goes wrong with your robot and you want it, and it starts, running over the field and you control it anymore and you want to stop it, then you can hit the e-stop button. It doesn't reset. Hit the reset or the e-stop button, you're out of match. I'm not sure I've ever seen another time when the e been used.
We tried once. I guess I'm wondering how do we interact?
Something on safe that is disabled. The only other time I've seen a field person, I've seen a field crew, usually the FTA, not field reset. The FTA, the person that's in charge of the field, I have seen them hit the e-stop before, but once again, it's because the robot is attached to the field and it might tear down the field or damage the field. So then they go out and e-stop the robot to prevent that damage from happening anymore.
What follow-up question, Rodney?
Well, how do we tie into that so that the stop? I'm not familiar with how.
It's all tied in through your driver station. You don't have to worry about it. Except for the field, it's all connected that way.
Now,
Okay.
Having said that, when on the field in competition, the EF is the way to stop your robot from either impeding itself or another robot. If you gotta stop it and it's an emergency, you do that. Like Jay said, once you do, you're done. You're part of the competition's over. You are now field debris. However, when you're testing your robot, you also have a way to disable your robot right away. And there's a couple ways of doing that. I believe spacebar temporarily stops it, correct?
Yeah. Through the driver station.
Part of the e-stop.
Yeah, it's the other one.
Is the e-stop. Okay, sorry.
Enter.
Enter, yeah.
Enter is a temporary stop. So if you need it to just stop so you can go and take a measurement or figure something out, is the enter button. But if your robot's going nuts and all of a sudden you're like, oh my Lord, children are going to get hurt, you hit the space bar, and in testing you can stop that robot. So your space bar.
Smash everything on the keyboard.
Now,
The space bar.
I don't know, Clint, I know we have it, but I don't know how we made it. But we also have an e-stop button that is tethered to the robot?
Anymore.
We don't do that anymore?
We don't have the disable switch anymore because now they enable disables through the enter button.
Okay,
So,
all right.
So what our team has done is on our driver station, we have two buttons that we've set up, and one is enable and one button is disable. It's basically a modular device that simulates an enter key and F1 key, right? So it's a big red button. It's like a little arcade button that sits on our driver station. So if we're at a demo or something and anybody sees anything, they know to hit the big red button and slap it to stop the robot. Because sometimes you're on the other side of the computer where the screen's in your way and doesn't let you hit the space bar or anything because you're on the other side. So we actually do have a button that you set up. You can do it. It's not necessary. It's more you just want to do it. we did.
Yeah, we used to have and Jay and I are sitting here looking at each other because we used to have one and we don't use it anymore. We did the same thing. We had a long cable that went, I don't know if it went to the laptop or I think it went to the laptop.
Yeah,
And
I think it was back when we had the old station with serial plugged in.
2009 probably.
Yeah, we walked
Part of
around the
the
place,
serial.
that way we knew we didn't have to be right behind the computer in order to stop the robot. But Rodney, just remember, at the competition, you hit that e-stop, you're done. When you're practicing, it's the space bar, same thing, same functionality, but the enter button will allow you to stop and then continue to go. Hopefully that.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, want to go ahead and run, Brandy?
All right. So we're gonna go ahead and move on to, team management, Ms. Norcross, unless anyone else has any questions about the robot.
One more question.
Oh, we got a couple.
For the robot, and the kid stopped the robot too fast, and it's over, and I just happened to be in the cockpit. Is there a suggestion on diesel control, for motion?
First of all, tell the kids to get out of the way. I don't know, how do you close that?
You could set up a profile, I guess, so that it doesn't abruptly stop. The concern with setting up that profile or deacceleration is that you might actually have so when you want to stop, if you're forcing a deacceleration in the code, it'll feel laggy. The one thing you can do is all of the tailings and mixers and jags, all the speed controllers, do have a way where you can configure them to be in a brake mode. What it means is we're in brake mode, and you're giving a 0 input to the motor controller, but if you're giving like a 1%, it won't be in brake mode. It's like shorting the motor on the backside, which like creates an electric brake. So that option that you can do, if you do that, you might not be able to push the robot around when it's just on the floor. So you'd have to carry it or lift it. Maybe that's not a big deal for you guys.
Right, another question?
Yeah, I wasn't able to find anywhere in there as far as, we're looking at the possibility of how we can build our robots functionally. I didn't sure how I can.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the coast brake option, like so the old Talons, old Victors, and old Jags, they all have jumpers. The newer SP and the new Talon SRX are actually a configurable thing. The Victor SP, you can do it match to match, but you can't do it during the match. Talon SRX, you can actually over the can send it a brake mode or coast mode configuration during the match. Depends on what you want to get out of it. I have heard about people on the jumper actually setting up the jumper and hooking it to one of your digital outputs, so that when you choose to be in brake mode, it's in brake mode, and when you choose to be in coast mode, it's in coast mode.
Rodney?
Two. One, how high can you stack those totes during the game? That's what I can find that anywhere.
So how high can you stack the totes during the game? I believe you can stack 6 high, right? There's no advantage to going higher than the backstop.
Right.
The question depends on how you ask it. Well, technically you can stack it as high as you want. However, anything over 6 doesn't count. So there's reason to stack more than 6.
The second question is, can we put additional lights on our robots so we can see, like if we wanted to know if it was doing something or let's say in one mode or another mode, can we put lights on there so our operators can actually see? Sometimes, I mean, what is you can't see it on the field.
Yeah, can you add lights or other visual indicators to the robot to indicate, things like a tote present or else? Is that what?
Right, exactly, yes.
Yep. So yeah, you can add LEDs, you can add other lights to indicate different things. I know we 2 different color LED strips in previous years. That there was a ball present, or, one was ball present, and then one was, I think, shooter enabled. So the drivers could see from across the field, what was doing.
Now, anytime if you were asking, can we put lights on the robot like headlights so that you can see, you can do that too, as long as it does not cause a distraction to the drivers on the other side. Or lights you put on cannot be, blinding to the drivers on the other side, because that's an unfair advantage.
I was actually talking about indicator lights, but thank you.
You might be able to find some old videos of it. I think, 33, the Killer Bees last year, put a flashlight, basically on the front of the robot, and lowered it and angled it in a way so that it did a proton cannon, basically, of light that across the floor, and they could tell what they're pointing at. They could tell if they're pointing at the toad or anything else, to maybe help with alignment. Like Kyle said, you can do that. It doesn't blind the other drivers. No, Class 1 only, and Class 2 laser you're not going to be able to see anyway.
Yeah, like the football, you can't put lasers out of the field.
Mr. Pointers.
Any other questions?
That classes are permitted.
Decided. Don't believe that.
No lasers.
Class 1 are, according to Clint got really quiet there.
Yeah, I just got into the same room as Brandy, so I shut my phone off.
Oh, hi.
Over Class 1, and any laser is not visible, so there's no place to put a Class 1 laser on to act as a laser.
All right. Any others?
Can I question, or is this not the appropriate forum?
Sure. Go ahead, Sarah.
Can the human player the only person that can throw litter on the field?
A person that can throw litter on the field. I believe.
The drive team, because I've seen where they're not required to be in their zone, which implies they can leave their zone. But my question, I guess another question off of it is where the rest of my team, and I'm sorry, haven't been there, done that like you guys have, but is the rest of my team allowed to be alongside the entire field? The rest of my team allowed to be used, or is it just that human player that can take action with a noodle? Or I'm sorry.
So the question is, who can touch the litter and at what time? So your drive team, right, is going to be a coach, drivers, and human players.
And a player. Got it.
The remaining members of your team are going to be up in the stands and scouting, right?
Okay, got it.
So they are not really able to be used in the match.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, because I just wanted to make sure that came from another coach, and so I'm asking it out. And I think that was it.
Anybody but the adult, I think, can touch the litter.
So
typically, it's going to be your human player.
Can the drivers?
But isn't there a rule that says that there's only one person in, I want to call it the litter box, litter box at a time?
There's only one person I saw. One person can be moving the litter and the tote, and there can only be one in the human player zone at a time, from what I have seen.
On the ground, they usually stay behind during autonomous. Always going to be in front of that line at any given time. The reason is because so we can't hold the chute open and I throw the tote in. So I'll make sure people.
Can the litter only be thrown over the human player wall, or can it be thrown over the driver station wall?
I think it's thrown over anywhere.
Okay, but can a driver throw litter, or just the designated human player?
Pretty sure it can be anybody but the drive coach.
Okay.
That can do it. What's going to see happen is you might have your human player can do anything with totes or noodles. Your drivers are going to be drivers let go of the control to go to noodle, like, that,
But this,
you're a human player for that.
this is an interesting question though, because what if their controls are only one person? So then they have two human players. Could they essentially have two human players out there, Clint?
I think so. I don't think there's any rule that says the driver can't touch the noodles or toes.
Okay.
However, like I said, you still have the rule about one human in the human player station.
Right.
If you want yourself the best advantage for throwing noodles, you're going to win the human player station because it's going to give you a closer advantage for throwing purposes instead of being behind the drivers and throwing over all of that electronic. But I'll look into that one too. Let me see what I can find. I don't recall, I'm going to start looking on my phone. I don't recall there being a rule saying that the drivers can't touch the litter per se or the toes.
One of the questions that was in the question thing, it was question 26, it says, must the litter be thrown over the alliance wall from only the human player zone or from anywhere behind the alliance wall? And they said there's no rule that a person throwing litter to be in the human player zone, so it implies anywhere, I guess.
Okay, question just now was how many human players would be on an alliance? So you have an alliance of 3 teams. Each team is sending out 4 people. There's an adult or a coach. For most teams, that adult is a coach. We can talk about that more next week. You have usually 2 drivers and 1 human player. So on an alliance, usually you have 3 human players, 1 from each team. You have 6 drivers, 2 from each team, and you have 3 coaches. So usually the situation, what we just asked a minute ago was, can there be more human players? If a team only needs 1 driver, can they have 2 human players? Clint's going to research that, and he's going to get that back to us. So that answered that question, and hopefully that didn't cause too much confusion for you guys. We talk a lot more about this as we get closer to competition.
Okay, the only rule I can find right now is G31, which coaches may not touch totes or litter unless for personal safety. So teams that are not coaches can touch totes and litter. So the Q&A for rule G31 to see if anybody asked that question, but according to that thing, because they find coaches are not allowed to, the is someone else can.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, what's next, Brandy?
That's another question, or?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. How many, and I think that this is a rule book, but just for clarification, how many totes and noodles does an alliance have between them? A certain number of totes for their human players.
Totes and 10 noodles per alliance. Yep.
Discussion before the match of how we get allocated, right? So you have 3 teams then, right? Maybe everyone's going to want as many totes as possible. So each one of us get 3 totes, and each of us get 10 totes, and to do what we want with. And then the last noodle is whoever gets to it last. I mean, we'll discuss before the match. So many times where you have a match and everyone wants the toast behind the glass, and no one can do anything with the land. So
Well, every single match depending on who you are partnered with.
Any?
So that it match to match depending on who you're partnered with and what their abilities are. Questions? I got like 2 minutes to follow the team management stuff. All right. So make sure that your team uniforms are ordered by the end of this week or beginning of next. The engineers are sitting down today to hopefully hammer out everything for ours. Make sure when you put in your order that you are using your school's tax exempt status. This goes for when you're ordering parts from places and you're doing anything, but t-shirts can be a really big cost, so you can save your team a lot of money by making sure that you use your tax exempt. With your uniforms, one of the things that you want to make sure that you take into consideration is your sponsors. Your uniforms, that they're on your robot. You recognize them during social media. The engineers actually take the opportunity to invite all of our, what we call partners, out to all of our competitions. And we are school, the curriculum directors, those kinds of people in that when we write out the invitations. This can be as easy as an email where you procure the emails of all of these people and send them an email that says, hey, we're going to be at Kettering University on March 6th and 7th, come out Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It can be to do that, or you can do an written out invitation, something that's a little bit more formal. That's up to you how you want to do that, but it's a great way to get your visibility in your community. And now is the time that you want to start thinking about sending these things so that people such as your Board of Education, teachers, principals, sponsors can have enough time to plan to come. If you send them to them just a couple days before, they might not have availability in their schedule to come. And having your partners and your school there will dramatically increase the success of your team because you will gain a lot more support within the community. You'll have people who didn't know about your program wanting to be mentors and assist with you. So it's really important that you guys take the time to do this even though you are rookie team. Important note for you guys, your sponsors or partners, if you need or secondary coach, there's a system called TIMS, or the Team Information Management System. It's an online thing where you log into your roster and see who's signed your first Michigan consent and release form. There's a section in there where you can update your team partners or your sponsors. You're going to want to make sure that you do this. There's a deadline coming up. I'm not exactly sure what that deadline is. I'll make sure that I put it in the notes for you. When you need to have this done by in order for it to be printed in all of the first marketing materials and for it to be read at competition correctly. So make sure that you log in and find out what you have in there and make sure that it's updated. If you received a State of Michigan grant, there is a requirement that anytime you have any publication or project materials, you indicate that it was developed under a grant awarded by the Michigan Department of Education. In your little sponsor list, whether on the back of your shirt or in anything else that you guys have, you must indicate the Michigan Department of Education as one of your sponsors.
Hey,
so make sure that you do this. Yeah.
When, do people know if they got the grant for Michigan State, the veterans?
The veterans or the rookies? There was a list sent out a while ago. I emailed the representative that has something to the MIG system for us to see if there was an update on it since then. So exactly what has been announced with that.
So I guess
I'm not exactly sure. I can take a look into that and get some more information on it.
Can you please, because I know maybe Gail would be able to tell us, because we're already submitting for our uniforms and stuff, and if I have to put Michigan Department of Education on there, I need to know because they're going to print yesterday. If I'm not being granted by them, then I'm not putting them on. It's kind of that simple.
Thank you. So share that for the notes that we update this and let you guys know where you can go to find out whether or not you got the grant and how it needs to be recognized. So, other things for team manager mentor tasks, make sure your uniforms are ordered and go through the notes with information on what's a great way to make sure that you're recognizing your partners. Also, Kevin's already started your travel plans. You need to make sure that you do so, including your permission slips, your accommodations, and your travel schedule. Days that you have to apply for off during school, those things, make sure that you're looking into that. So, like, we're gonna have to push scouting back again. Really, scouting. We've got something that's nice to start thinking about right now, but it's not something that you absolutely probably need to be started on right now. We can wait until it's well done before we start talking about scouting to.
I want to just say tonight, thank you to all of you who are asking questions. It's really important that you understand we're here to answer your questions. If you have questions ahead of time, send them to us, and we can just weave them right into what we're talking about. And even we can say, got a question, this was the question, and we can answer your questions ahead of time. And that's us kind of balance out our time. But do not hesitate from asking questions. Really awesome call tonight with all the questions and hopefully clarification for a lot of you.
If there's any other questions, I'll be on the line for a couple extra minutes if you want to stick around, and you are more than welcome to. And so what we know, since this is your first call, if someone asks a question, we write the question and the answer right in the notes that go out. So if you have a similar question than what I was asking, the information is there for you. Any questions? I know we kind of blew through the team management stuff, but more of it was reminders for this week than anything, and a lot of what wasn't a reminder is outlined very specifically in the notes for you.
The call hasn't signed in with Brandy yet. If not, please make sure that you sign in with Brandy, or if you're online, in with Jay.
So if you're on the line and you haven't checked in yet, I'll need your team number first and then your name, please. That has any additional questions before we sign off today?
Brandy.
So too. All right. Well, thanks,
guys.
And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and give me a call. If not, I'm probably going to work tomorrow afternoon or Friday afternoon, getting the notes out. Hopefully, they'll be out by Friday afternoon.
Oh, I do have a quick question on that Michigan grant. Are they? I don't remember what was the amount that veteran teams were allowed to get. It's our question for Michigan and then Michigan State. Is that correct?
I believe that there was like tiers for veteran teams where like some of them got a certain amount. It was need based, I think, and it was based on your district, blah 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 blah.
Oh, really?
So I think what it was based on this year.
Okay.
So I sent your initial grant. Then some teams got as little as $750, and some teams, veterans, got up to $2,500 or something like that.
Okay.
For their initial payment, and then we're supposed to be offered $5 if you make it to states, and an additional $5,000 if you make it to rural.
Okay. And do you know if they're doing the SBCU teachers again this year?
Not done.
Okay. All right. Look into that for next week because it's important our coaches know about the SBCUs. Okay. So I'll look into that and yeah.
We don't have any teachers as mentors on our team, so that's not applicable to us.
Yeah.
So our lady that sends our grant doesn't even worry about that. So that might be a question to talk with your med.
But you know, my understanding is the district can give that money to anyone who coaches the team. It doesn't be a teacher. The new teams, they're using teachers in the district, and teachers can get that stipend. But the grant, I believe, says name a person, and it doesn't have to be an employee of the district.
What we did for Clinton and I last year is he became a temporary employee.
Okay.
to give up that stipend.
Uh-huh.
But, sorry, I thought you were talking about the continuing education credit.
No,
Sure.
specifically for the coach's fee. Well, I did. I was originally talking about the stipend.
Okay, yeah. So, and I think some schools qualify for a stipend and some schools did not. It was, I know last year it was like this big blanket thing, right? If you got the grant, you got the grant. If you didn't get the grant, you didn't get the grant. Now it's like all these different levels and situations of the grant.
Okay. Which,
I look into that a little bit.
yeah, understandably on the district level for fees. However, it's frustrating and it'd be nice if they still supported the coaches because doing it too long, I enjoyed getting the money last year.
Right?
So,
We don't get anything for our district otherwise. So.
yep, I know. And I think it was an important thing last year for teams to have someone be able to get funded the additional that they're doing, so.
When we, you know, because our team doesn't use any of our team money for mentors' expenses, so that's money to pay for our super expensive trip to St. Louis was kind of nice.
How come you guys don't support your mentors and pay for their costs?
Things that we started a while ago, like when our team started, that none of our coaches get paid out of the team fees. We use all the money to go support the team and to reduce student costs. It's something that we decided our first year that we wanted all the money to go to reduce student costs. And we've just always done, I guess.
It's a noble idea, but I will tell you, the longer you do this, the more the money adds up, and the mentors that stay end up spending so much money that it's one of the few perks for the unbelievable number of hours that they put in. Two things I tell my mentors: number one, I won't charge them for anything, and number two, you know, I will feed them every night possible, because for the number of hours that they put into it, it's just a small, otherwise I can't get them. I mean, it's too many hours and too much time, and so that's something that we've evolved, which is why the regatta was so important, because we needed to offset costs. And what a team thing, we call it a team thing, but that means all mentors inclusive get, you know, their rooming, and we, you know, shoot, I shoved these guys 4 into a room. Jason's laughing right now because there have been in the past five adults in a room. But they also enjoy the camaraderie and they have fun and they laugh and giggle. It's like, you know, good night out. Mm-hmm. But I can't do that anymore. After 19 years, put too much of their own money and time into it. And so that's something that really evolved when we got to Clarkson, more so than anything. And it was just something that I said, if I want them to come back, I need to make sure that we raise enough money to pay for the members as well. That is one of the things that I think has helped hold on to some of them. So
yeah, we have a lot of parent mentors on our team that travel with the team anyway.
Right.
To see their kids. For the most part, the people that travel with, if I believe most of them, if we tried to offer them money, they would not take it. Right.
And we don't offer them money, but we just take care of their room. We take care of their meals. I mean, right. It's all part of the expense. You take care of their uniforms, but however, when the, you know, spirit wear items come up and they can add other things, that's up to them to decide, because that's not something that they need to be part of the team. So, yeah, no.
We do that as well. We do provide